On the campus of Iowa State University, where my dad taught, there is a magical place called Ryman Gardens. And it's part indoor botanical gardens, part outdoor sculpture gardens, and a gift shop. I always get excited about gift shops. And there's also a butterfly wing where you get to walk around with many, many different species of butterflies as they flutter through the exotic plants. On several of the building's walls, there are floor-to-ceiling display cases that show hundreds of differently colored butterflies, as well as an incubator where you get to watch in real time as the butterflies emerge from their chrysalis. And the Greek word that we translate as transfiguration is metamorphao, which might sound a little bit like another word that we know because we translate that same Greek word into metamorphosis, which is what is happening in those incubators. An egg becoming a caterpillar, becoming a chrysalis, becoming a butterfly is going through metamorphosis. And during the process, the animal, it sounds kind of odd to call them animals, but insects are indeed animals, experiences its tissue getting reorganized. It's a complete cellular breakdown and then a reconstruction of its internal structure. And this inevitably changes the animal's external appearance as well. In the case of Jesus in this story, because the author intentionally used this word, metaphorao, we understand that Jesus' transfiguration wasn't just a surface level glowing because he faithfully used oil of Olay rejuvenating lotion every night. It was a complete change on a molecular level. It was a holiness that could no longer be contained within his body, and it pushed through to alter his external appearance. But I believe that Peter, James, and John were changed at that moment too. There are many places in the Bible where an ordinary human, going about her or his ordinary human business, encountered God and was changed by it on a deep physical level. Moses' face shone after he encountered God on Mount Sinai and received the 10 Commandments. It shone so brightly that he had to wear a veil over his head so others could bear to be near him. Jacob walked with a limp after encountering God in that divine wrestling match in which God touched Jacob's hip and put it out of joint, maybe to teach him humility and reliance on God instead of his own strength. And Paul was tackled by Jesus on the road to Damascus, or by Jesus in spirit on the road to Damascus, and was unable to physically see for 3 days, so he could learn to see spiritually how he needed to change his ways. And so on, people like you and me, ordinary humans living their ordinary lives, sometimes exciting, sometimes not, and then encountering the divine and walking away a different person entirely. Well, the same person, but one who has been reorganized and reconstructed, and nothing is ever really the same. The disciples were afraid and confused. It was Jesus of Nazareth standing in front of them, but suddenly it was Jesus, the Messiah, standing in front of them because now the radiant light of his holy nature was shining through his human nature. But Jesus clearly wanted those 3 disciples to be there with him. He handpicked them from his followers and brought them along. Jesus could have pulled the classic trick out of his sleeve. You know the one I'm talking about. Hey, kids, the disciples, why don't you watch a VeggieTales episode or 3? And here's some candy. Take as much as you want. Oh, here's some money for pizza if you want to order some later. I'll be back in a jiffy. And then he could have gone up in the mountain all by himself, right? But he didn't. Jesus wanted them there. So I think he wanted them to be changed by the experience as well. Maybe he even needed them to be changed in order for them to be able to do what he was going to ask them to do. And as if the actual transfiguration wasn't confusing enough for those disciples, next, the voice of God boomed out of the heavens. Boomed probably isn't the most accurate word. It was probably something between a whisper and the voice I used yesterday when my cat wouldn't stop getting into trouble. And that was the point at which the disciples fell to the ground in fear. But Jesus touched them and said, "Get up, don't be afraid." And I think that's what all of us who follow Jesus experience at times, moments where we falter, times when we fall or even fail, definitely feelings of fear. But then there's that hand reaching out to us, pulling us up and telling us to try again and to not be afraid. And God tells us to get up and don't fear because he needs us to be who he made us to be. And he also desires it for our own sake because his plans are always wiser. And he wants good things for his children. So maybe these mountaintop metamorphosis moments happen every day, or maybe even several times a day. Maybe every time we are overwhelmed by something we don't understand and we fall or fail or fear, that's when a little of God's holiness does some rearranging within us and then bursts through our skin, which sounds a little gross, and others can see that we have been changed. And we realize that we need to get up and keep going. This many times a day transfiguration sounds an awful lot like a sea creature called the immortal jellyfish. Discovered in the 1880s, the immortal jellyfish is one of only a few species discovered so far that can reverse age, going from a fully matured jellyfish back to its infant stages. And it happens whenever this creature experiences stress or is attacked or is sick. Anytime the immortal jellyfish experiences a crisis, it quickly reprograms its cell structure and reverts back to its infant stage. It sounds like some sci-fi magazine, right? But then when the threat passes, it begins changing its cells once more, and it goes back to full maturity. It's called transdifferentiation. And I don't really understand the biological purpose of this response. I assume it has something to do with survival, but it makes for a great metaphor, doesn't it? Regardless of which stage of development the jellyfish is in, whether it's going forward from young egg to mature jellyfish or reversing that order and moving backward from mature jellyfish to an earlier stage, the creature has the same DNA, but the blueprints change. And I think that's what's happening to us when we get stressed or threatened or weary. Our DNA stays the same, but we shrink and revert back to something less than our fullness, something less than what God intends for us. And it happens over and over, every time we experience difficulties. But here was Jesus saying to Peter, James, and John, "Get up, don't fear what's happening. I'm going to work a good work in you." And it's the same thing that God says to you and me every time we are brokenhearted or retreat in fear. He brings us back to who he made us to be. And I don't know how it works. It's almost as if he puts his arms around us and gives us such a powerful bear hug that it literally squeezes our innards out and we're changed. We likely don't see these transfigurations happening because they probably look different than how it looked for Jesus. I myself do use expensive oil of Olay face cream in the hopes of getting radiant skin, but I'm probably not, and you're probably not either, going to actually radiate or glow or sparkle when God reaches inside us and rearranges us a little. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. Jesus' transfiguration prepared him to go back down the mountain to his flock and continue his ministry. But the disciples seemed a little reluctant to go back down the mountainside, didn't they? They wanted to hang out a little longer. Peter suggested that they build a few little dwelling places and do some glamping, bask in the glorious moment. Not only the appearance of two giants of their faith, Moses and Elijah, but also the change in Jesus and whatever that was about. But they also had to go back down the mountain to their daily grind. For them and for us, the mountaintop moment, as wonderful as it is, directs us to go back down into life. Because with transfiguration, we are not only changed, we are also equipped and then called into service and sacrifice. We all need to find this time on the mountaintop because we do fall on our face, don't we? Because it is too much to bear. But on the mountaintop, just like with his disciples, Jesus touches us and says, don't be afraid. So when you're stuck in a rut and you don't know how to get back to living, when you're burned out or knocked down or beaten up, go to the mountain and be transformed. Go to the mountain and be remade. Go to the mountain where God reminds you you are not alone and that you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who have faithfully struggled before you, your very own Moses and Elijah. And then do the hard part and walk away from that transforming metamorphosis moment and get to work. But trust that you have been changed by that and that you will always carry that holiness in you wherever you go. It's one of the greatest blessings we are given, that we are not left where we are right now, but are continually invited to more and more by a God who loves so deep and so wide and so high. The ability to be changed by our loving God in ways that will reverse the changes inflicted by this broken world is both a challenge and a gift. Maybe we are remade every time we choose hope over fear or love over hate. Maybe we become more fully ourselves whenever we choose to trust in God and not in ourselves or fickle human ways. Thanks be to God for the encouragement along the way, for the moments that we fall and we hear those wonderful, precious words. Don't be afraid. Get up. May we always have ears to hear these sacred moments of encouragement. Amen.